I never knew that camping in the Screening Woods would be such a terrible idea. But little did I know, I invited my friends, Bales, Chris, and Ben, to camp out in those woods. We invited Sherb along, who seemed pretty content with this idea. The woods was pretty tiny, really being only shaped like a square that could fit about 40 cots, but a whole wall was filled with TV screens, and the ground was covered in a strange moss. Ben, who was less enthused, asked me, "Vanilla, do you really think this is all a good idea?" I shook my head. I was too hyped to end it all. But then, disaster struck. Sherb surprisingly disappeared, which surprised all four of us, considering how excited Sherb was at the beginning. For a while, we stood there, with shocked expressions all around. The only evidence we found was the orange Sherb packed, in case we were hungry. It was a smart move, mainly because we forgot to pack food, but we were full enough to survive a day, so we didn't even think about it all too much. But there was also no fun to be had when all one of our friends literally disappeared out of the blue. This was very bad news, so bad in fact that Bale started sweating out of fear, but there really wasn't much we could do about it. However, it took so long to calm down that it was already bedtime for us. We thankfully texted our parents before going that we'd be perfectly fine. We thankfully compromised just to go to sleep, ready to get things done tomorrow. But of course, those asleep will not know what happens next. I attempted to get a good night's rest, but ever so slightly quiet footsteps made that seem like a fantasy. It was a laugh that made me wake up, and the sheer horror on my face, I just couldn't describe it. It was Ben in front of my eyes, but he was sporting a strange trap-shooting visor, and the laugh was not something my best buddy would make. It sounded evil. Everything he did to Bale was just something I refuse to describe. It was just awful. Ben absolutely ruined Bale's, a moldy article of clothing, and a suspicious pair of shades. Ben would never do this. It really feels like he was being controlled by someone pulling his strings. When he started to turn on the TVs, I knew something was up. Those TVs have no power button or remote, and I desperately tried to wake up Chris, who managed to sleep through the whole entire thing. Another maniacal laugh. I desperately tried to tell Chris about Ben acting weirdly around this place, but she simply wasn't convinced. Presumably because Ben was trying to act natural and saying that he managed to find a way to turn some TVs on, due to a hidden power button he stumbled across. And as if matters couldn't possibly get worse, they somehow did. I found photos on Chris's camera that showed the weird feral head on Bale's. It's a picture I won't wipe from my memory. It's absolutely revolting how poorly it fits in. We all got tired in the middle of the night, and by the morning, Bale's was gone. In the same way Sherb disappeared, except this time, without a trace. Me and Chris decided to move the sleeping bag out of the woods, mainly to prevent any other oddities from happening. Ben was asleep that morning. We heard from our buddies Teddy and Frank that Ben was eating Sherb's orange in a black uniform. They also mentioned the suspicious pair of shades he wore. We figured something bad was going down, so we came in as fast as we could. Shortly after we arrived, Ben told Teddy and Frank to go back home. We were just having a Nintendo Switch party while you guys were gone, he told us, trying to hide his tracks. While I decided to explore the surrounding forest, Chris sent me photos of TVs being suspiciously taken down, and the trash can where Bale's cot once was. And to add fuel to the fire, when it got back to the woods, Ben was asking, no, wanting Chris to join his gang. Chris, of course, shook her head in disagreement, which shocked and infuriated Ben to such high levels to extents I just can't count to. I could not believe my eyes when Ben started doing the things he did to Bales. I just couldn't close my mouth for the longest time. There Ben was, slipping Chris into an inescapable coma, ready for step 2. Right there, I was just full of anger. My two best friends no longer acting like they do. Chris's content, lifeless body sitting on a haybed, and Ben turning out to be this evil person. The anger in my body was so powerful, I couldn't tolerate this so-called Ben anymore. I did what I had to do. End it now. There I was, a lonely teen stranded in the mess of a woods. I didn't need to keep hitting the unforgiving gang leader any longer, for he was gone. But my poor friend Chris was no more. I wasn't fast enough. The pain in my emotions hurt tremendously. Everyone who went into these woods within these 2 days were my best friends for as long as I can remember. Now I regret about everything else. I was distraught. A worse fate than failure. For the bodies that were found, there was a funeral. Nothing was able to be found from the two, except for Chris's beloved cushion from her earliest days. It was the first time I finally took the shades off. I showed such undisguised sadness that ever could tell I truly cared for these two. I remembered Chris loving the outdoors so much that she would decorate her backyard with her equipment and pets all the time. And I remembered the innocent eyes of Ben when he was little. While I overheard Teddy spilling the truth about Ben to Roswell, Pudge wished me the best of luck for my life leading up to this point. He was almost always as trustworthy as Ben once was, and held my hand the whole funeral. But who knows if even he is hiding something nobody needs to know. Sometimes, some stones are best left unturned.
The events that took place were unrealistic, and everything that occurred was scripted and acted out. Do not try this stuff at home, as this video is not really meant to be taken seriously. Anyways, have a good day.